You've got like an actual like two-headed, four-winged bird monster just like actually pulling and putting its thumb back on. They're like, oh no!
Yeah. Ta-da.
Welcome back to the internet's #1 fake history podcast, The Lore Boys. This week, we're talking about another Chaos Primarch from Warhammer 40k, specifically Magnus the Red.
So this week's Primarch, that's a guy on Discord.
Yeah, so this week's episode comes at the request of
Magnus the Red.
Joshopoulos actually was the first one I could find in the lore request channel. It's possible before we had the lore request channel that Magnus had requested it, but I just didn't see it there. And unsurprisingly, of course, longtime patron Magnus the Red, to whom Jamie and Peter are referencing. Now, Peter, I'm going to hit you with a bit of a gotcha. Did you pull up the patrons by any chance?
No, but I put my phone on vibrate. Give me 2 seconds.
Magnus the Red, formerly Magnus the Pink, because he was a
and Magnus the Poor.
Magnus the Poor, whenever he had to take a break.
It's actually formerly Magnus the Red, then formerly Magnus the Pink, then formerly Magnus the Poor, now formerly Magnus the Rad.
Oh,
right. You can do kickflips now. You got a tech deck.
Yeah.
No, I have the patrons up now, actually.
I tried to give my tech deck to Ethan's baby, and she just put it in her mouth. She's not ready for it yet.
That's all she does. Yeah.
One more year.
Little screws in that bad boy.
Sorry, I didn't mean to try and choke your child.
It's okay. They try and choke themselves. That's all they do. That's all they do.
But yeah, shout outs to new patrons. Christopher Land. Too bad we can't get a Christopher Wind and Fire as well. Avalon. And also, either Jesus or Jesus, if that's a joke, I'm not sure. And today, right in under the wire, Jackson Burrows, which, fantastic name.
And of course, Terry for upping his sub.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, cool. Thanks so much. If you guys want to shout out, you guys want to join the Lore Boys family, get access to some bonus content, the episode art, the loser titles game, all that fun stuff, you can go to patreon.com/loreboys. There's a link in the description. Check it out. If you're curious, you don't have to commit. You can just check it out, see what you might get.
What if we want to hear lore about Magnus the Red?
Give me $1 million.
Oh, frig. I got a 5.
He looks around his desk. Okay, let me see what I can scrap together here.
I got a Canadian 5, and that's the best I can do.
Jamie's a notorious loose cash around his desk kind of guy, though.
That is true. So if you want to hear lore about Chaos Primarchs, Magnus the Red specifically, then let's just freaking talk about it.
We can do it.
We've done a few other episodes on the Primarchs specifically. This one will be similar. Jamie's flashing checks from the government to his camera.
I got checks to the government, so I'm trying to get this funded for us, guys. Sorry.
Okay, just sign that over to me, and I'll start this freaking episode already.
All right, cool.
We've done a few other episodes on the Primarchs. It's going to follow a somewhat similar structure. I actually really don't dwell very much on Magnus's time as a child or what led him to becoming to joining the Emperor as a full-fledged Primarch. No required listening for anyone who's just jumping in. This you should be good to listen to the story from the Warhammer 40k universe.
Yeah.
So Magnus,
if you didn't know about the 40k universe, there's a big old Emperor. He's like got super genes. He had a bunch of kids that go over the corners of the world.
Yeah, we're scattered into the far corners by the creatures of the warp.
And Magnus being one of these kids. Then there was a whole time when communications dropped and everybody started just like making their own culture and stuff because they weren't part of the big super net of communications.
There was a dark age as warp storms ravaged the galaxy. And all communications broke down between all these disparate human colonies spread throughout the galaxy. And the Emperor goes on a crusade to reunite everybody. And part of that crusade is finding all his Primarch children of his gene seed. Is the canon name. The Lore Boys canon name is Godcome. And
I was thinking God seed in my head, so it's starting to get all mixed together.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah,
it's a Godcome cocktail. So Magnus the Red,
a white Primarch. Would you drink a white Primarch?
Yeah.
I mean, if it was
it
like a
gives me
White
superpowers?
Russian, sure.
If it gives me superpowers, come on. I'd give God a blowy for superpowers. Please.
Okay, that already is going to be an out of context quotes. Yeah.
Join the Lord Wars Discord for the out of context quote channel. So Magnus the Red began as all the other Primarchs did. As Jamie was mentioning, he was a test tube baby in the Emperor's basement on Earth. Magnus was unique, however, in how attuned he was to the psychic energy of the universe, something called the Immaterium or the Warp, kind of what we were referencing. It's the hell dimension from what's the movie?
Event Horizon.
Event Horizon. I was like, Horizon Walker? That's not it. That's a subclass in D&D. So yeah, it's this like hell dimension where demons live, and we can use to humans can use to access faster than light travel, and can have been able to spread throughout the galaxy. It also gives you some like psychic / sorceress powers.
Cool.
It was this gift, this kind of attunement to the warp, which allowed Magnus to be the only Primarch to actually communicate with the Emperor while he was still a little gene seed fetus. So him and the Emperor were able to speak while he was still gestating before being cast through the warp into the galaxy.
What's a gestating baby got to talk about?
Yeah.
Hey, Dad.
Yeah.
It's like when Will Ferrell gives birth on SNL, or he's the baby. It's like, oh, it's hot in here.
That's Dad, could you please just eat an entire tube of cookie dough for me, please?
I've got cravings. Did the Emperor get cravings when he was making his?
I can only assume. Yeah, I think Little Boy's canon. He definitely got like, and they're like, because he wasn't like carrying the baby, but I think it was like the psychic connection to his gene sons, right? That
yeah, of course. The power of the warp gave him cravings for like pickles in the middle of the evening.
Yeah.
A lot of Primarchs probably got to drink a lot of Gatorade in between, get them fluids up. But
yeah, exactly.
What's the refractory period for like his Primarch children? I'm like trying to think. He's like sitting on the golden throne or whatever on Terra. His feet are all swollen. He's just yelling at some of the who are the custodies, the golden knights. Yeah, it's just like going to get him Nutella and a jar of pickles at the depth at the corner store at 4:30 in the morning.
Yeah, crying, laughing, and yelling all at the same time.
Yeah, exactly.
Was there something
when she was pregnant?
Was there something that you had to run out and get while your wife was pregnant? No, no. She had a very stable pregnancy, I'd say. I feel like she liked ice cream, but she likes ice cream now. Like she had a lot of cravings for like McDonald's milkshakes, but I never ran out to get them. It was more like when she was out, she'd pick one up, kind of thing. Or when we were out, we'd pick one up. I used to, on my way out when I was working there, I would take a medium chocolate shake home a lot when I would work. It was no wonder why I was a chubby little kid.
Chocolate milkshake every day really makes the doctors want to see.
Yeah, I worked like 2-3 nights a week, but that's still too many chocolate milkshakes in a week. Yeah.
The mediums are big too. It's just so many. I don't even want to think about how many calories are in them.
No.
So Magnus's and the Emperor's, father-son bonding wouldn't last long, of course, as those pesky, ruinous powers that be would cast all the Primarchs across the galaxy, like Jamie said, to various planets. Magnus ends up on the planet Prospero, a planet with wooden.
It's doing well, huh? It's got gold on it.
It has a city of light, so that's gotta be good. It is a planet with an inordinately high volume of psychers, so human wizards, essentially, that access the warp, essentially. Which, like, wouldn't you know it? This guy who has, the most powerful psyker of the Primarchs ends up on this planet. The psychers had chosen this planet. Like, the reason there was such a high volume of them was specifically because of like they were witches, kind of in like a very Salem, coming out of the Dark Ages of technology. Very much in like a Salem witch trial era of mankind, where they were kind of shunned and people feared them and didn't know what they were capable of. And honestly, for good reason, because like they were fucking with the hell dimension, right?
Yeah.
So like they probably weren't doing good things. Just like the witches that burned. Yeah.
Right? Yeah. Women learn to read. Dangerous. People who can access another dimension to cast spells, also dangerous. It's
exactly. Yeah,
If you
white
throw a
men
psyker-
learn to podcast. Like, look at the damage they've done.
Oh God, could you imagine the planet we'd get cast out onto?
If you
No.
throw a psyker into the warp and it sinks and dies, then it wasn't a psyker. But if you throw a psyker
right.
into the warp and it's okay, then it was a psyker, and you should hang it.
And you have to kill
Yeah,
it.
yeah.
Exactly.
And the former option, of course, means they died a good Christian death, which is still a valid thing to do in the 31st century. Stop me if you're going to get into this. Are there warp like ley lines? And is Prospero on a ley line, like where the fabric is particularly weak? Kind of like how, like a lot of mystical like DMTA places in the desert, right?
There are absolutely places where the warp is weaker. We talked about one on like the last episode where they basically you basically have to build like a fortress outside of it because like chaos demons will just like pour out of it incessantly.
Right. Yeah.
There's something called the Eldar Webway, which like manipulates the warp in like a very safe manner. Which the Eldar use. We did an episode on them like 4 years ago, probably.
Yeah.
But they're one of the alien Xenos races in 40K. They're able to use it in like a much more controlled manner. I didn't read anywhere that Prospero specifically was like a focal point for psychic power.
Okay.
It was explicitly stated that like, oh, you know, they came here because they were shunned and they weren't always welcome on every other planet.
Okay. They weren't drawn to it per se.
Maybe they were, and I'm fine saying Lore Boys canon. Yeah, we'll say it was a strong point for, and obviously there's like a million books in just the Horus Heresy books. There's like 20, I think. Like I obviously did not read everyone. In fact, I didn't read any of them. I kind of skimmed through for the interesting parts, found some cool quotes, and went on my merry way. I've heard good things about a lot of the Horus Heresy books, specifically the Graham McNeil or Dan Abnett is the author whom I've heard is quite good. So maybe worth checking out. I didn't for this episode, I guess.
There's like a fan-made Warhammer movie on YouTube that I've watched parts of that looks really fucking cool too.
It was fan-made. He was doing a fantastic job. I'm blanking on his name right now, but he did get hired by Games Workshop, I think.
Astartes.
Yeah, Astartes was the name of the series, but I don't remember the person's the artist's name.
Cool.
The auteur's name.
It was like the only, just a quick aside about like Warhammer fan stuff. It was like the only one with a plot. It's a silent film, which is incredible. Mm-hmm. A lot of Warhammer fan content I've seen is just somebody practicing in like katana and making 100 soldiers walk down a big street during a festival, and that's supposed to be interesting. Like my introduction to the 40K fandom before Ethan was just like nerds making parades, basically.
Yeah. Oh, cool.
That was the alternate name for this podcast, actually. It was Nerds.
Oh, yeah? Nerds on Parade?
Nerds on Parade. So Magnus's capsule landed in Tisca, the City of Light, which was the only real settlement on all of Prospero. We'll get into why it's the only real city on all of Prospero. And when I say we'll get into it, I mean we won't really, but I'll explain it in a bit. The comet that was his cryotube, excuse me, streaking into the atmosphere was seen as an omen, naturally, and he was quickly taken in by the resident psychers to learn the craft. So it's like, hey, God, baby, with like I can only assume like him being probably the most potent psyker in the Imperium, probably including the Emperor of Mankind. Like he is probably more attuned to the warp than the Emperor. Like that presence suddenly appearing in the sky and streaking down to Earth, I can only assume, and this is probably a bit of Lore Boys canon, maybe it's actual canon. Every psyker on the planet probably felt his presence as soon as he arrived, right? Like they're probably all, if you're at all attuned to the warp, this like very powerful, being attuned to the warp suddenly appears in the upper atmosphere. You probably all feel it. So it really didn't take long for them to kind of like descend on him. He was taken in by a mentor known as Amon. And
not a woman.
No, not a woman.
Okay,
no.
Okay. Just
gonna say Amarth.
The history of Magnus. So Magnus delved into the depths of psychic arts, mastering every training program and studying arcane volumes on sorcery and the warp. He quickly surpassed his own master, Amon, who was the greatest sorcerer on Prospero, excuse me, in just a few years. So like he's been there 4 or 5 years
there too,
and a lot of sorcerers there, the highest concentration of sorcerers in the galaxy, and he's already the best one after just a few short years.
Could you imagine being the weakest psyker on Prospero? Like how embarrassing that would be. Like, what is the minimum wage psyker job? Like, would he be like psychically stealing milkshakes after shifts?
I can only assume that there were some like non-psychers there too, right? Like, I think it was like originally a world. It's probably just like a more inclusive, but there's probably also people who are like having children, and I don't know if there's any guarantee that if like two psychers have a baby, if they'll be like able to attune psychically. Probably way more likely, but.
That would be awful if all your brothers and sisters were like powerful psychers and it skipped you. You're the muggle of the group.
Yeah, I was gonna say you just like they've got Magnus the Red locked up under the stairs.
Yeah.
So as Magnus's influence grew with his notoriety, Magnus led a campaign to rid the planet of beasts known as Psychnuian, which is the first picture that you guys, the first spoiler image that you guys can check out. It's essentially an 8-foot long parasitic psychic wasp.
Jesus.
Yeah, I know. These giant fuck off bugs, as I call them in my script, are known for how they prey on weakened psychers, using their speed and venom to inject wounded sorcerers with their eggs, which will eventually hatch within the still living host.
I like how this is a very standard giant horrible wasp, just like the ones in New Vegas, the Cazadors, except it has like a cartoonishly huge brain. Just because it's on the psychic planet.
That's how you know it's psychic. Yeah, they're psychic. The wasps are psychic, so they're psychic.
No kidding.
Yeah,
its stinger though is longer than its brain, even still. So you know it's mean.
Yeah. And they're 8 foot long or like 2.5 meters long. So.
Everything's so big in this universe. I hate it.
Chipmunk on my windowsill. Fuck off.
Hey, they're okay, man. What chipmunks do?
He's here to lay his eggs in you.
Yeah, right?
He's lay his nuts in you.
Chipmunk with a giant brain.
And he sticks his nuts in your mouth until they pop and their babies chipmunks come out.
Oh God!
And nuts, I mean acorn.
I would suck God's chipmunk for psychic powers. So Magnus like becomes kind of the go-to, like, hey, this guy's more powerful than Amon, and everyone knows it. Like, no one really contests him on this. His trial on the planet is he leads this expedition to exterminate these things on Prospero. They do exist elsewhere in the galaxy, it seems. So I don't know if like at some point before the Dark Ages, there was, black market, like animal dealers who were like smuggling these back and forth between planets. But he doesn't exterminate.
If you grind up their brains, it'll turn your non-psycher kid into a psyker kid. So you've got you've got the kids with the washouts from the Prospero Academy or whatever that are like buying basically, what is it? What's the study drug? Adderall. Like made of grind up wasp brains or ground up rather.
Yeah, if you grind up the stinger and do a line, it gives you a psychic boner.
Oh, hell yeah.
Whoa.
So being the wasp killer and biggest brain telepath, Magnus was elevated as the leader of Prospero due to his extraordinary gifts primarily. Magnus embarked on a mission to unify the cults of sorcerers and initiate the grand task of rebuilding Prospero's civilization. So when Magnus had first arrived on the planet, many of the cities, almost all of them except for Tizca, were in utter ruin due to a warp-related catastrophe which had struck decades earlier. Okay. I didn't look into this. There might be something in one of the books that explains what this warp catastrophe was. I'm going to say Lore Boys canon. It's like too many psychers all doing crazy psycher things. Probably, all the other planets who had shunned them being like, I fucking told you so.
Yeah.
As they just destroyed their own planet.
Like the soul burst in ESO. You just too much magic in one place.
Yeah, exactly. So
they all got too like fucking gacked up on ground up wasp stinger, and then the fabric of reality became too thin.
Yeah.
So first, the capital city Tizca underwent a stunning transformation, evolving into a city of awe-inspiring beauty. Magnificent structures resembling pyramids and towers crafted from glass and marble adorned the landscape, while wide boulevards and enchanting parks created a paradise-like atmosphere. Visitors to the city were immediately captivated by a harmonious psychic ambience Magnus had installed, giving them a feeling of pure bliss while in the city. So just walking into the city makes you nut, essentially.
Excellent.
Wow.
So as soon as you walk in, everybody's walking around with a big stained crotch. Just got all day.
It smells like flowers. You get tingles down your spine. There's Creed higher playing in your ears. What else is bliss?
I was gonna say there's just ASMR playing over the PA system. It's instead of an air raid siren,
there's
it's
a
just
lady with long nails eating a pickle.
Yeah, that's those cravings. It's the psychic cravings it gets from Slaanesh and the warp, right?
So this kind of ushers in an era of peace, prosperity, heightened psychic well-being, had a profound impact on the planet's population of powerful psychers. Prospero soon gained a reputation as a haven for physically and spiritually beautiful humans. So,
Nice.
if you want to be a cool guy, if you're an elite, I guess Prospero's the place to be.
That'd be something to be like really a huge compliment to receive. If someone said you're spiritually beautiful, like if you also weren't super ugly, and then they're like drawing away from that, but
yeah. Oh no, honey, no, you're spiritually beautiful though.
Yeah, it is a big compliment if you're exactly.
My two eyes don't like what they see, but my third eye likes very much what it sees.
There's a guy at my Depanar who had a tattoo of an eye on his forehead. And he was like not the most stable looking guy. He was like kind of shouting outside a lot.
Forehead tattoos don't scream stability.
Yeah, no. I mean they're getting more common. I know some people with face tattoos are cool, normal people.
I'm not saying that they scream instability, but I'm saying that they don't scream stability either. Right?
That's a good point.
That's all.
That's a good
point.
Hey,
like you could be a totally stable guy with all the face tattoos in the world. I know plenty of people too.
Yeah,
very lovely people, very stable, but you're not selling stability by throwing an eyeball in the center of your forehead.
Yeah, no. The cover of that book is getting judged, is what I'm also saying.
And it is different. I guess I got to ask about this guy. Did he have other tattoos, or was it just the eyeball?
That's the only one I noticed. It was a whole day of weirdos. Because I went outside after that, and there was a guy. It was pouring rain. He's not wearing shoes, and he's just has a blazer on with no shirt, and he's wearing shorts. And I watched him walk over, and he's got eyes like fucking moons, like dinner plates.
So he's high for sure.
It was moving day, and I think he just like moved into his new place, took a bunch of mushrooms or something, and his feet are all cut up, and he's walking bare feet on the street. And I watch him climb up onto someone's like second story, or is like kind of like 1.5 story balcony, steal a cane, and then he starts walking across the street with it, and he notices me watching him. So he's staring at me and then slowly caning himself across the street with no shoes on.
Jesus Christ, man.
I had someone watch my dog when I left her outside the dep after that, because I'm like, I don't know, man, this guy's freaking me out.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
I like to think that the guy with the third eye tattooed on his forehead just has a third nipple tattooed right in the middle of his chest, too.
Can only hope.
Like all the chakras all the way down.
A third nut on the back of his nutsack.
Yeah.
Yeah. A third pickle that he eats, ASMR or whatever we're talking about. Yeah.
So magnificent in his vision, Magnus also dedicated himself to consolidating and expanding the Prosperans' understanding of what they called the Great Ocean, which was their name for the warp, and the enigmatic primordial creator, Chaos united, probably an immensely powerful force which drove the currents of the warp. It's essentially, I think we talked about it on our last episode on Mortarion, on how like Chaos unified is this idea that all the chaos gods, the 4 chaos gods in Warhammer 40k, are all just different aspects of the same greater being, just chaos, essentially.
Okay.
And they started an airline called Chaos United Airlines, where they beat the crap out of a Primarch doctor who was just trying to get home. Right? Yeah, okay.
Yeah. We did talk about that last episode, I think.
Chaos United 93.
No,
heroically crashed in Pennsylvania.
So, to further his pursuit of knowledge, Magnus constructed a great library at the heart of Tisca, nestled within a majestic pyramid. Within its walls resided the accumulated wisdom of Prospero, encompassing the realms of sorcery and the intricate nature of the warp. Despite the wise warnings of his mentor, Amon, about the perils of delving too deeply into the Immaterium, Magnus fearlessly embarked on extensive and far-reaching psychic journeys into the furthest reaches of the warp. So this guy is like, yeah, sure, Dad. Like, I'm the more powerful sorcerer, though. So, like, I know what's best. I'm jumping into the hell dimension again.
I wonder if Kane guy was also on, like, a psychic journey.
Yeah, he was half in, half out of the Immaterium, for sure.
Definitely.
So with his neck so far stuck out there, it wasn't long before the Emperor of Mankind would notice him in the warp. In the year 840 of the 30th millennium, the Emperor arrived on Prospero and stepped foot into the grand precincts precincts of Tiska, and unusually, he and Magnus shared an immediate embrace and engaged in a conversation that seemed to transcend time. So you guys will remember from the other episodes, the Emperor would always show up and like wager something to the Primarchs in return for their service, and they would always kind of fail, and he would, then reveal himself to be the Emperor. Magnus, when the Emperor shows up, he knows who the Emperor is. Like they're talk like they're old friends, and again, they spoke when he was just a fetus. So
Magnus,
remember when I was in that tube?
Yeah.
Magnus, the only Primarch without daddy issues. Like, that's cool.
Exactly. Wow. So far. Seems like old Maggie here didn't need to undergo the trials that his Primarch brothers would have to, thanks to the psychic bond he had with Dad as a fetus. Following the reunion, Magnus and the Emperor embarked on an extensive journey of joint exploration and study of the Immaterium. So they get together, they're like, hey, let's study the warp a bit more. And the Emperor is like super keen to hear Magnus's take, because again, Magnus is at least on par with the Emperor in terms of psychic abilities, maybe surpasses him. Who's to say?
It's funny.
Hey, new guy in town. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, new guy in town. What?
I was gonna say new guy in town. It's just like, hey, I know who you are. What are you gonna do? You gonna make a bet with me? You know I'm gonna fail. Let's go.
I would do that to you. Come here.
It's funny to think of a 20-foot man and a 14-foot man like sitting around and in a seance or two, like they have like the candles all around and they're holding hands. We're going on a joint exploration, like the biggest, brawniest men of the entire universe. Like,
because I've also imagined this entire city as like the Craft, like goth girls from high school.
Right.
Yeah, girls who describe themselves as witches now.
Yeah, my first girlfriend did that. She had a moon tattoo on her wrist, and my dad asked her about it. He's like, what's that for? She's like, oh, it's for the pagan mother goddess. And he just laughed at her.
Hey, follow what you want to feel. Yeah,
I know. I mean, we were 15.
Better. It's better to be a witch than a white guy doing a podcast, right? We've already established that this episode. So
we've done far more damage to the world than women who can read. Yeah, I'd say
absolutely.
So.
Yeah, I think honestly, people with the podcast or witches, both insufferable on Twitter, but that's
yes. Fair enough.
Yeah. So the Emperor echoed Magnus's old mentor while they were studying the warp, and cautioned him about the perils that lay within the warp, where dark entities lurked, seeking to exploit mortal souls for their own gain. So, real dad comes in, says, your stepdad was right, son, and I know I don't get to see all that often, but you do got to do what he says when you're in his house until you turn 18. That includes not fucking around with the hell dimension.
I'm not the psych dad. I'm the dad who's psyched up.
So the Emperor would eventually gift Magnus with care of the 15th Legion, a legion known for their heavy use of psychers. The Thousand Sons, as they were known, harnessed the formidable power of sorcery, utilizing their warp-derived abilities to assert dominion over entire populations. Instead of resorting to conventional full-frontal assaults like their fellow Space Marine legions, they would bring worlds under their sway through the manipulation of minds.
Damn, I've been waiting for the Warhammer 40k full frontal, but I guess we'll wait another episode.
There's a lot of it out there, I'm sure. Without even looking, I'm sure there's a lot of it out there.
Yeah. What kind of point army are you running in your full frontal? Whatever.
69, 420 points. Nothing comes without a cost in this grimdark setting, though. The Legion's initial euphoria surrounding their psychic prowess turned into revulsion and horror. A dreadful tide of degenerative mutations known as the Flesh Change swept through vast segments of the 15th Legion's battle brothers.
Ew.
This insidious alteration manifested in grotesque forms, transforming proud Thousand Sons Astartes into mindless abominations. While they didn't know it at the time, in the millennia to come, they would be recognized by the Imperium as gibbering chaos spawn, which are essentially like a basic unit of the chaos forces.
How do you catch the Flesh Change? That just happened?
Use warp too much. Use your warp psychic too much. So these issues severely weakened the Legion, raising doubts about its survival. It is said that the Legion earned its name due to the mere 1,000 stable Astartes who remained within its ranks by the time Magnus was found on Prospero by the Emperor. Faced with this dire predicament, the Legion chose to replace the majority of those afflicted by the Flesh Change, the majority of those afflicted by the Flesh Change into stasis, clinging to the hope that a future cure would emerge to reverse the devastating mutations. So you've got people catching radiation sickness, and they're just throwing them into hyperbolic chambers and being like, well, we'll unfreeze you when we get a cure, buddy. So sit tight.
Oh, boy.
Yeah, I know that because I've seen some of the models. The Thousand Suns are the only Space Marines I was ever interested in when I was buying models and painting them. Because one, the colors are great. Two, the kind of Egyptian theme of them, like the pyramids, are no surprise because they kind of have like the pharaoh-esque crests on the sides of their helmets, like the blue and yellow lines going up.
Yeah.
You know, like a pharaoh headdress, I guess would be the thing. Also, I know there's like a two-headed bird monster, and the flesh change when I Googled it seems to be, it's just like, oh yeah, you got a bad case of turning into a bird monster.
Turning into a bird.
Yeah. This might be a good art, but you know how Walt Disney froze himself? What if he was going through the flesh change? And it's just like him in one of those things that are like freeze from the neck down, but his face is all fleshed out.
And it's all bird beaks. It's just a face full of bird beaks.
Yeah, Walt Disney, when he was breaking up unions, was also turning into a bird in secret.
Yeah, it's why he was a bad person.
Just like a bird.
Initially,
I've never met a bird who makes for a good person. I'll be honest. They usually make for, some of them make for a good bird, but never for a good person.
No.
I don't know. Wonder about that. Wonder if you can meet one. Do dinosaurs count? Because they're birds, right?
Yeah, and actually, there's some birds who can repeat words like a good person. I bet you birds can make a good person from the other room. I'll say that.
I think plenty of corvids would be like a fine person. You know what I mean?
Maybe
a little manipulative.
Maybe not a good person, but a fine person.
Yeah.
We'll
have to hit the lab and figure this out.
Right. Initially, the Thousand Sons Legion was not permitted to even join the Great Crusade due to its lack of numbers and the sickness. And some voices within the Young Imperium even advocated for its dissolution and the euthanasia of its members.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
Feels a little extreme, but Magnus, however, beseeched the Emperor to grant him an opportunity to find a solution to halt the mutations, assuming his rightful role as the Legion's leader. The Emperor granted him this request, and after many decades of relentless effort, Magnus achieved success, finally bringing an end to the aberrant mutations ravaging his Legion. So the Emperor left Prospero and Magnus and his new Legion and returned to his Great Crusade. Magnus remained looking for that cure, though it would not come easily. Like I said, it takes a few decades for him to get there. He scours all the knowledge accumulated on Prospero. He studied the men afflicted by the disease, and, of course, he delved deeper and deeper into the Immaterium in search of an answer. The specifics on how he found the cure are like a little nebulous at best. There's been a lot of retcons. A lot of people, a lot of people on Reddit that I was reading their posts a lot of people say that Magnus is probably the most retconned character in the 40k lore, probably.
Oh, really?
So originally he was like, so Magnus has one eye. In like all the depictions you'll see of him, he has a single eye.
Was it picked up by a bird man?
Yeah, maybe. Honestly, essentially, and we'll get there in just a second. But
okay.
Originally, he was just like a Cyclops. He was like a giant red Cyclops. Now he's like, he has red skin and he has one eye, but he clearly had two eyes, but one eye is like missing. So like, there's been a lot of changes to him, I guess, over time.
One eye's for the Immaterium, and one eye's for the real world.
Sort of in a way.
Yeah.
I think the specifics of how he finds the cure, as far as I could tell, were deliberately left empty. Though, like I said earlier, there's a lot of 40k books out there. I might have just missed the actual source. I was looking for the actual source because there's a lot of people who say what I'm going to say is the Lore Boys canon, probably the actual canon, and probably also the most widely accepted theory is that Magnus found the cure for the flesh change in the warp. One fine day, he took a stroll out in the Hell Dimension, and when he returned, he had lost an eye, but had gained the ability to cure his men. Magnus had made a deal with Tzeentch, the chaos god of change, evolution, mutation, intrigue, ambition, knowledge, sorcery, destiny, lies, and trickery.
He traded an eye for a Wii to help everybody.
Things would go well at first for Magnus, but we know that inevitably there's going to be a turn. This is the Chaos Primarchs, after all.
Yeah.
Here's an excerpt from the novel A Thousand Suns by Graham McNeill. "You were the one that helped me save my legion," said Magnus with a sinking heart. "Save? No. I only postponed their doom," said the shadow. "That boon is now ended." "No," cried Magnus. "Please, never that. There's a price to pay for the time I gave your sons. You knew this when you accepted the gift of my power. Now it is time to make good on your bargain." "I made no bargain," said Magnus. "Not with the likes of you." "Oh, but you did," laughed the eyes. "When in your despair, you cried out for succor in the depths of the warp. When you begged for the means to save your sons, you flew too close to the sun, Magnus. You offered up your soul to save theirs, and that debt is now due." Then take me, declared Magnus. Leave my legion and allow them to serve the Emperor. They are blameless. They have drunk from the same chalice as you, said the eyes. But more on that after the break. Despite setbacks and the lingering skepticism surrounding the Thousand Sons' psychic abilities and genetic flaws, the Primarch and his Astartes developed an unbreakable emotional bond. Roughly 100 Terran years after Magnus was recovered on Prospero, the Thousand Sons Legion was granted permission to join the Grand Endeavor as the 28th Expeditionary Fleet of the Grand Crusade. You guys can check out spoiler art number 2, which is just pictures of the Thousand Sons. You can see the little Egyptian flare on the soldier to the left's helmet, and in the foreground is obviously Magnus the Red with his red skin and his one eye.
And his very kind of Egyptian... I don't know what the Egyptian kind of...
I believe it's a khopesh?
That's it, yeah. Yeah, that sounds familiar enough. Also,
you understand? You understand what that weapon is? Khopesh?
Hey, khopesh. Yeah, that almost sounds like a... Can you do an impression of Bill Burr and say that again?
I don't think I could do a very good Bill Burr. I'd have to practice. But a very red face and red hair, this guy could pull off a Bill Burr. Maybe.
A Bill Burr in the sun too long?
Yeah. It's a very cool photo.
He's very kind of antiquity styled compared to the other ones. Got a scarab kind of molded into the chest piece of his power armor. He's got the khopesh, and then kind of like an all-around like Hannibal meets ancient Egypt look with the elephant tusks on him as well.
Yeah, I like the 80s hair metal hair.
Yes.
Well, yeah, of course. I mean, like, we all know that Hannibal crossed the Alps to bring glam to Rome, right?
Yeah, exactly.
He's so tall. He's so tall. He has skulls on his kneecap of his armor. So I assume that's to scare the little people away.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
That's to scare the Krillin from DBZ.
Yes. Yes. Yeah.
Magnus was a fairly competent yet impetuous commander, especially later on in the Crusade. Initially, his legion used diplomacy and guile to bring new worlds into the Imperial fold. Eventually, though, that tactic's viability wore a little thin, and they turned to good old shin kicking to get the job done.
Can they not use mind control?
So there's some of that there. I mean, they just come up against like more powerful forces the further they get away from like where the Imperium's control is. So they come up against people that they eventually have to fight. They do prove themselves in battle several times. They fight alongside other legions at times. Specifically, Lemon Russ, he fights alongside quite a bit, which we'll get to a little bit later.
That's the wolf guy.
Things come to a head for Magnus and his Thousand Sons, however, when the Council of Nicaea kicked off. Do you guys remember the Council of Nicaea from the last episode?
No.
It's the Salem witch trial. So, Magnus had always possessed an innate connection to the enigmatic warp and its hidden depths. During the Great Crusade, he encountered isolated human cultures scattered across the galaxy where psychic individuals known as psychers had flourished. Despite the Emperor's cautionary warnings, Magnus delved into the arcane knowledge of sorcery, compiling his findings in the monumental Book of Magnus. This ancient tome, adored with simmering covers made from the psychically active hide of a slain Psyche-Nuan, was securely fastened to Magnus's armor with a heavy gold chain and sealed with a lock made of lead. You can see it in that picture, just hanging off his hip. Among the many conquests of the 20th...
skin on it, right?
Yeah, exactly. It's psycho wasp skin.
Wasp skin.
Among the many conquests of the 28th Expeditionary Fleet, Magnus discovered the existence of the Eldar Webway and its real space portals. So he's the one who discovers the Eldar Webway, which will become the Emperor's obsession in a few years.
I do remember the Webway because I know in WoW when I play, there's something called like the Overload Web Wrap, and people go Overload Web Wrap, and I remember saying for the Webway, the Webway or whatever. Okay. It sounds like you have a nice little accent there. Yeah.
Magnus's understanding of the Webway's geography and functions remain incomplete, a flaw that would later prove costly. Nonetheless, he utilizes his formidable psychic prowess to forcefully penetrate the star-spanning corridors of the Webway. So again, the Webway is kind of this like covered highway that the Eldar have built through the warp. So it's a much safer way to travel through the Immaterium. And Magnus uses his psychic abilities to essentially just like kick a hole in the side of the tunnel so that he can get into the Webway and experience.
It's like a train that you go through and you just see like eldritch horrors on either side. But
exactly.
People are reading the newspaper or whatever. They're just on their way to work. And,
The real horror is that one guy playing music through his Bluetooth speaker.
Oh, dude, use headphones. It's the fucking webway, man.
As the Great Crusade ventured farther from Terra, encounters with warp-influenced creatures grew more frequent. So you end up with more and more of those creatures the further away from the human-controlled areas you get. These unsettling manifestations raised suspicions among Magnus's fellow Primarchs, as his mastery over the warp and sorcerer's powers paralleled the abilities of these malevolent beings. So we're getting more and more skirmishes with warp creatures, like chaos creatures, essentially, and the other Primarchs are like, damn, this looks a lot like the shit that Magnus does, right? Yeah. Like this is the same shit that he's doing. Like what the fuck is that guy messing with? Has he been messing with the Hell Dimension this whole time? I thought it was all sleight of hand.
You've got like an actual like two-headed four-winged bird monster just like actually pulling and putting its thumb back on. They're like, oh no.
Or it's under like the secret compartment of the top hat, and you open it and the two-headed dove flies out.
You actually saw a chaos creature in half, but its flesh regrows, so it just becomes two chaos creatures now.
Yeah. Ta-da.
So the warp got in, was through into like an upside down, an upturned magician's top hat, and it just started pouring into the room.
All these like chaos rabbits pouring out. Primarchs like Leman Russ of the Space Wolves, whom I mentioned just earlier, and Mortarion of the Death Guard, whom we talked about on the last 40k episode.
He's doing great too.
Harbored distrust towards Magnus due to his legion's reliance on the warp and their preference for physical strength and direct combat. You guys will maybe remember from the last episode that Mortarion was one of the most vocal opponents to sorcery. He had grown up on the chlorine gas planet with all the chlorine gas sorcerers and hated them for it.
Yeah,
right.
Another point of contention arose from the Thousand
Rightly
Suns.
so, though.
Yeah, rightly so. They both went to chaos in the end, right? So an interesting little thing where Magnus kind of stayed more true to himself than Mortarion in the end.
Was that the episode that we had? Like there was like the levels of the planet that were kind of like the levels of hell, like where you go down and there was like a bunch of weird trees, then a bunch of weird like structures.
It was one of the necromancer towers that would go up and up and up into the atmosphere. Yeah.
Oh, okay, yeah.
I'm not sure which one you're talking about, but it wasn't the last one.
Okay.
Another point of contention arose from the Thousand Suns' insatiable thirst for knowledge, gathering extensive archives from newly compliant worlds, which other legions viewed as counterproductive to the Imperium's mission of spreading a specific strain of human civilization. So it's white colonialism, baby. Burn your pagan gods. We got Christianity for you.
I'm here for gold and silver and Christianity, baby. Get that shit out of here.
Exactly. They also perceive the collection of knowledge, regardless of its source, as dangerous due to the malevolent nature of entities dwelling within the Immaterium. So, also worried about different creatures getting access to forbidden knowledge.
Also, fair enough, though, because in the real world, had Christopher Columbus, gone through time and come out the other end in Cuba, and Cuba was full of demons, then maybe we'd have a different view of things. Right?
Yeah. My cat's on top of my tax papers, which I imagine feels the same thing. You don't want creatures near your important documents, but
no. Magnus is insatiable
your
search
unfiled tax documents from 2015 or something.
Yeah,
so, be real hard and loose with important there. Sitting on a box in your living room.
I'm all filed. It's just in a box. It's better than normal. I used to have it loose in a drawer. I feel like a box is it's an upgrade.
Box is better. Box is better. I will give you that.
She's playing the piano.
She is.
She's like the keyboard cat. You guys remember that?
Yeah, dude.
Oh yeah.
Remember when the internet was so pure?
Yeah, before the demons of the warp touched it.
Elon Musk and co.
Yeah.
Tensions escalated during a joint mission between the Thousand Suns and the Space Wolves, where Magnus and Leman Russ nearly came to blows over their differing views on psychic powers. A violent clash was narrowly avoided thanks to the intervention of Lorgar, Primarch of the Word Bearers.
Right.
Over the following decades, other Primarchs voiced their displeasure towards the existence of Psykers Astartes within the Thousand Suns and their service in the Great Crusade. Rumors and condemnation spread, with the Primarchs of the Death Guard, Imperial Fists, and Raven Guard leading the charge. Calls were made for the 15th Legion's disbandment and their expulsion from Imperial records, much like the fate of the 2nd and 11th Legions, which I think we said were like cotton candy Space Marines.
It's
I don't
Candy
remember
Floss Marines. I remember being one of them, yeah.
Daddy's Beard, as it's known in French.
Yes.
Barba Papa.
Barba Papa. Yeah. As the Imperium's intolerance towards mutants and psychers continues to grow, with the lessons of the dangerous psychic powers learned from the worlds devastated during the Age of Strife, suspicions mounted specifically around Magnus. The Emperor, recognizing the need to address the issue, called for the Imperial Conclave at the volatile planet of Nicaea. This gathering brought together the Primarchs and key officials of the Imperium, including the Emperor himself, Malkador the Sigillite, and other high-ranking figures. Known as the Council of Nicaea, this pivotal event witnessed passionate debates on the use of psychers. We did talk about this a little bit in the Mortarion episode. Mainly, we focused on Mortarion's take, but I do think I gave you guys a quote from Magnus during that, so I won't give you the same one. But Magnus ardently argued for the benefits of psychic abilities and sorcery in advancing the Imperium's cause and hastening the Great Crusade's success. So he's like, guys, we're trying to travel through space. Okay, and we need to go faster than light to do that, and we need to use the warp to do that. And I have magic powers which let me manipulate the warp. It's going to be good for us. Yeah. And everyone's like, that's a good point.
It's a tool. Why don't we use it, right? Like, let's use all the tools. Our enemies are going to use all their tools.
Exactly.
Why are we while saying this, waving a gun wildly around the room?
Yeah. His Kopesh.
Yeah, oh yeah, of course.
his Glock Kopesh.
Whoa. He's just like, everyone's like, whoa, buddy, just kind of getting out of the way.
Opposing him were Primarchs like Leman Russ, who despised sorcery as unclean and cowardly, and Mortarion, whose first-hand experience with psychic warlords on his homeworld of Barbarous fueled his aversion to psychic powers. When the council reached a consensus that psychers posed a potential danger, the Emperor decreed that, for the sake of unity, no one would be held accountable for their previous actions involving psychic abilities. So, hey, it's a crime starting today. You won't be penalized for having used it in the past.
Good.
But the use of psychic powers within the Imperium's military forces was banned, except for sanctioned individuals like astropaths, navigators, and tightly controlled psychers authorized for specific Imperial tasks. So astropaths and navigators are the ones who drive the ships through the warp. Every Imperial ship has an astropath and a navigator who help them navigate the warp so they can access faster than light travel.
It's not illegal to be a psyker, but it's just illegal if you sell the psyker or you use it in public. As long as you just stay in your home.
If you sell the Wasp Brain, you just can't be trading in Wasp Brain.
Yeah. Little psychic abilities, you watch Netflix in the comfort of your own home, no one's going to look another way. But yeah, you just non-public and don't sell it.
Certainly
not. Emperor Biden, are you going to let the psychers out of jail who have been previously convicted? And he's like, no.
Yeah, when they're already overpopulated. Anyways.
The librarians of the Astartes Legion were disbanded, and their members were to return to conventional combat roles, forbidden from ever utilizing their psychic gifts again. Consequently, Magnus and the Thousand Sons were prohibited from practicing sorcery or employing their coveted psychic abilities and knowledge. These edicts of the Council of Nicaea also gave rise to a new position within the Space Marines Legion, the Space Marine Chaplain, entrusted with upholding the Imperial truth and ensuring an Astartes Legion's unwavering dedication to the Emperor's commands. So we have an Inquisition now.
I'm sorry, but I'm stuck on the Joe Biden being the God Emperor thing. Like, imagine the God Emperor riding up on his bike and then like falling over.
I mean, that straight up is the God Emperor though. Like, he can't leave the throne. He can't move. He can't walk. So.
When he tries to go up the stairs, he trips like twice and then fully falls over.
On the way up to the Golden Throne. Yeah. Honestly, I've seen pictures of the Emperor where he's like just a skull plugged into a throne. I'm like, on some days he does look better.
Somehow the leaders of one of our real world countries' greatest countries is more powerful in some ways than the Emperor of Mankind, and that's by being a 72-year-old man who can sometimes walk.
Yeah, Hunter Biden. They saw him going into the Hell universe through his laptop.
Bunch
of trouble. Yeah,
Hunter Biden filmed himself smoking crack in the webway, going 170 miles an hour.
I'm sorry.
So, though he's disappointed by the decision, Magnus reluctantly accepts the restrictions on sorcery in the Imperium. He's like, hey, you're the God Emperor, you're dad. If you think it's right, I'll abide by it.
Yeah, you're the Emperor, so decree you. All right, that's democracy when you just pass down laws out of nowhere,
exactly. Right? That's democracy in our authoritarian dictatorship.
In our all agreed to.
He does soon really start like bending the rules a lot of justifications and rationalizations for like, oh well, I can use it to cook my eggs. Like that's not that's not gonna hurt anybody.
It's funny. I was gonna ask if he started using it for like small tasks, like just testing the limits of it at some point. So he does do that, obviously.
Yeah, there's like lots of times when he's like he is still using it, and the Thousand Sons are still using it, and he's always justifying it to himself, essentially. Yeah. And I guess to any chaplains who would be in the Thousand Sons, like he's getting away with it to a certain extent, where he's like, oh yeah, like we did use sorcery, but like I really wanted to smoke crack and drive 170 miles an hour, so like.
The safest way to do it is to keep my car on the road using my psychic ability.
Yeah, exactly.
Otherwise, I could have hit somebody. The
crusade goes on. Despite the banning of sorcery, the Thousand Sons continue to serve. The crusade continues on full force.
Unabated.
After the victorious Ulanor crusade against the Orcs, the Emperor entrusts Horus of the Luna Wolves Legion with supreme command over the Great Crusade.
I trust him.
Horus was bestowed with the title of War Master, granting him authority over all Imperial forces, including his fellow Primarchs legions. The Emperor...
Hunter Biden, so addicted to crack and Horus.
Very good. The Emperor, having achieved triumph, departed from the crusade to pursue a secret project, expanding the Eldar webway beneath the Imperial Palace for humanity's benefit. So again, this becomes
he is Elon Musk, just digging dangerous tunnels.
Yeah, exactly. He's digging fire hazards into the Eldar webway. Mm-hmm. Becomes obsessed with it, and it's kind of consuming him, I guess, and it's part of the reason why he gives command over everything over to Horus. Some would argue that probably what leads to a bit of the downfall.
Yeah.
Of everything.
I have to do illegal science. Keep an eye on my psychic army for me.
Yeah, exactly. Meanwhile, Magnus, deep in meditation on Prospero, experiences a psychic vision foretelling the corruption of Horus by the ruinous powers and the catastrophic events that would follow the Horus heresy. Half of the Space Marine legions would betray the Emperor, and the Imperium would be torn apart by a devastating civil war. The vision remained conveniently silent about Magnus's own fate throughout all this. I will do another episode, I think, on the Horus heresy, and probably maybe my next episode, maybe in a few episodes, I don't know. But we'll talk more about it. The list, I think plenty of the listeners know. If you don't know anything about it yet, know that more of it is to come. It's the civil war of the 40K franchise, where half of them, including Magnus and his Thousand Sons, will convert to Chaosianity.
Whoa.
So burdened by this unsettling knowledge, Magnus attempts to reach out to his brother Horus through psychic means. Sadly, he discovered that he was too late, as Horus had already suffered a near fatal wound from the Kinnebrock anatheme, which, again, we'll talk about if we talk about Horus, or when we talk about Horus, when we talk about the Horus heresy.
It's substance abuse alongside Hunter
Yeah,
Biden.
exactly.
Yeah.
Psychic Kopesh.
Yeah.
Overwhelmed with despair, Magnus chose a path that would ultimately seal his destiny. He decided to employ the immense power of his legion's sorcerers to convey the impending civil war to the Emperor on Terra, bypassing the slow channels of astro telepathy and resorting to forbidden sorcery.
Oh no!
Using an astral projection spell, Magnus' spirit soared through the Immaterium, desperately heading towards Terra. So he's like, "Hey," again, like those rationalizations, those justifications. He's like, "Hey, this is big. They're gonna betray the Emperor. People are gonna be corrupted by the forces of chaos." He absolutely is still just trying to do the right thing here. He's not in this moment being very directly influenced by the forces of chaos, but who sent him that vision?
Well, he's well-intentioned, which is like a very classic downfall of a lot of characters we talk about.
That's
is like the by any means necessary guy, right?
It's the Arthas, it's the Anakin, it's the whenever you got to go to the dark side or use the bad magic, it usually ends up biting you in the butt.
Yeah. But he's like still trying to do. He's still trying to do the right. Yeah, exactly. It's the ironic punishment. But like at this point, Siege has been like, no, I'm the ruinous power of change and magic and evolution and trickery, but evolution. I turn dinosaurs into birds, and I'm sorry for it, but like you can trust me.
So Magnus heading through the warp. During his journey, he encounters, wouldn't you know it, a webway quarter. And wouldn't you know it, it's heading right to Terra. But
perfect.
But its friggin' defenses are impenetrable. He's trying his like psychic punch a hole in the side again. It's like, it's not working. He's not strong enough. This section of highway is reinforced.
Psychic hitchhike, just like
Yeah, exactly. But he's outside the tunnel.
Or bust.
He's outside the tunnel. The train can't stop for him. In his moment of desperation, an anonymous entity within the warp offered him additional power to breach the barrier.
Oh no!
So, this has got to be this guy. This strange shadowy figure in the Hell Dimension must have good intentions too. He wants to save my dad also.
You want to play a card game, kid? If you win, I'll let you in. And if not, I get all the souls of your whole army. And the devil pulls an ace. And anyways.
Magnus, grasping at his lifeline, shattered the barrier and materialized in the Emperor's throne room. However, this act violated the formidable psychic wards the Emperor had erected around the Imperial Palace, inadvertently allowing warp entities to invade the human portion of the webway. The assault resulted in the death of numerous Mechanicus Adeptus who had been assisting the Emperor in his grand project. The Emperor's work was undone, and Magnus, horrified by the consequences, returned to his physical body on Prospero.
I blew up all of Dad's nerds.
Yeah, exactly. Just like literally like kick down the door to like his dad's like shack out back where he's like working, and he's got like all his little 5 to 6 foot tall men working behind the door who just all get crushed by the flattened
just immediately.
Dad, I keep warning you, people are going to betray you and try and kill some of your people.
The wind from the door falling over just blows over his house of cards too. He's just like, son of a bitch.
There was one window and Charlie Chaplin tap danced away, but
back on Prospero, Magnus receives a vision from Tzeentch, the enigmatic entity responsible for aiding him in breaching the webway. The Architect of Fate revealed to Magnus that his destiny was to serve the will of the ruinous powers. This revelation, only deepened the Primarchs' turmoil. So
the will of the ruinous powers.
Exactly. So Magnus, gets back home. He's feeling like real bashful, real ashamed. Like, oh boy, Dad's gonna be real upset about that one.
No, I wasn't astral projecting. I was dreaming. I'm sure of it. That didn't even happen.
Yeah.
It couldn't have happened.
And he gets a vision from a dark god who's like, oh yeah, good job. By the way, you work for me now.
Oh,
you always did. Maybe presumably that conversation, that quote that I read you guys earlier happens kind of now.
It's the Ner'zhul.
The Emperor, furious at Magnus's flagrant violation of the Council of Nicaea's ban on sorcery, saw his actions as a betrayal of the Imperium's ideals. He held Magnus accountable for the damage inflicted on the secret Webway project, a centuries-long endeavor to utilize the Eldar's Webway construct and unify all worlds of the Imperium. In the eyes of the Emperor, Magnus became the traitor, while Horus, his beloved son, remained beyond suspicion. So this is, again, just like making everything worse. All his like trying to make things better, everything he does just seems to make things worse and just pushes everything towards the heresy. To address Magnus's transgressions, Leman Russ, Primarch of the Space Wolves Legion and staunch opponent of sorcery, was ordered to bring Magnus swiftly to Terra for judgment. However,
physically though, not magically again. Come on, go pick him up.
Exactly. However, Russ at the time had already been corrupted by Horus. He was deceived into believing that the Emperor had changed his mind after issuing that order and commanded the annihilation of Magnus's Thousand Sons Legion instead of a mere reckoning.
Oh.
Accompanying the Space Wolves were the Adeptus Custodes, Imperial Army troops, and the Sisters of Silence, powerful anti-psyker witch hunters. So Leman Russ is not yet like a Chaos Space Marine, but he is serving Horus, who is the battle master, right? The war master of the Astartes. So while he will descend to Chaos eventually, he's still just like an Astartes right now, but he thinks Horus basically tells him like, oh yeah, Emperor, I know he said that like he just wanted him brought back, but he told me on the side he actually wants you to like kill him and every other trace of Thousand Sons there.
Jeez.
Magnus, still at home on Prospero, came to the painful realization that throughout everything he had been nothing more than a pawn to Tzeentch's will. He also understood that the brewing conflict between the Space Wolves and the Thousand Sons was part of a larger chaotic scheme to eradicate two loyalist Space Marine legions. So Magnus is like, oh, they're sending the Space Wolves after me, and they want to destroy my legion, the Thousand Sons, because we're loyalists, and the Space Wolves because they're loyalists. Determined to break free from the clutches of chaos, Magnus made a fateful decision. Rather than subject himself and his legion to further manipulation, he would sacrifice the Thousand Sons and himself. With this resolve, Magnus made a heartbreaking choice, not to warn the people of Prospero or his own Astartes about the impending Imperial assault. He shrouded the planet with a psychic veil, ensuring that his legion remained unaware of the approaching invasion fleet. He refrained from ordering the activation of planetary defenses and twiddled his thumbs while the Emperor's fury descended on Prospero. Consequently, the surprise Imperial assault on the planet, known as the Fall of Prospero, caught the Thousand Suns completely off guard. Devastating firepower rained down from orbit, reducing the unprotected planet to a desolate wasteland.
Oh my god. Do you think they were irritated or frustrated when that happened?
Mm-hmm.
I think definitely annoyed. Yeah, probably pretty frustrated by it.
Right. Yeah, I think frustrated too. Yeah.
And if anyone is wondering what the hell that's about, subscribe to our Patreon, listen to our bonus content.
Oh, we're talking about which is worse, irritated or frustrated.
Pretty sure that's bonus.
Yeah, I think so.
Despite the impenetrable psychic shield generated by the sorcerers of the 15th Legion that had safeguarded the Prosperan capital city of Tisca, the invaders staged an invasion. In the ensuing brutal battle, both combatants and civilians of Prospero were mercilessly slaughtered, and the once mighty city was obliterated, taking with it its invaluable libraries and accumulated psychic knowledge, which plunged Magnus into profound despair.
The Egypt theme and whatnot, and I was like, oh yeah, and like all this collection of knowledge, real Library of Alexandria moment. They really did close the loop on that one.
Yeah. As Prospero burned, Magnus remained convinced that he had committed no wrongdoing deserving of such retribution from his father, the Emperor. He believed that his actions did not warrant the annihilation they were subjected to. Overwhelmed by remorse, Magnus had a change of heart and took to the battlefield, unleashing his immense psychic powers to repel the assault of the Space Wolves. Ultimately, he confronted his brother, Leman Russ, in single combat. So, he, seeing everything burn, seeing his people slaughtered, and again, this was not the Emperor's orders. This was Horus telling Leman, oh yeah, this is what the Emperor wants, is for you to slaughter everybody. This was not the Emperor's orders. So he sees this, and Magnus is like, oh, okay, I didn't warn anybody, but I wasn't expecting this. So if it's going to be this, then I'm going to fight back.
He also thinks he's doing the right thing. I broke Dad's smoking crack and doing magic law to warn him of the chaos, and now my brother, Leman Russ, has betrayed me. Sort of
exactly.
Thing, right? He has no fucking idea. He still has no idea he's being manipulated, right?
Magnus realized he was being manipulated. That's why he didn't tell anybody. Right. Yeah, by Siege, by the forces of chaos. That's why he didn't tell anybody that they were coming. But he mainly thought oh yeah, they might put my Astartes to death, but they're not going to kill all the civilians on the planet.
Yeah, at the very least, I'll get a stern talking to.
And he cares about these people. He gave up an eye for them to get rid of the flesh change and everything. Right?
Yeah, exactly. He gave up an eye, and it turns out, swore all their souls to chaos. But eye for an eye.
The worst I thought is my dad would come and throw something at me that I would embarrassingly not catch because I have no depth perception.
He shows up with the pig skin after abandoning his kid, throws it, he misses the catch. Yeah, that was the trial. Sorry.
Yeah.
I'm on to the next kid.
He actually completely misses it, way off.
Can you imagine if,
you serve me now?
Can you imagine the 2nd and 11th Legions, they were just stricken from the record because there was some really embarrassing trial that the Emperor gave the Primarchs that they just failed, and he's like, oh my god, just okay, never mind. Sorry, wrong planet. I gotta go.
Some big tall guy in a bar on the Candy Floss Marine planet is like, the Emperor's my dad, I'm 10,000 years old. They're like, yeah, okay, man. You got to pay your tab from last week. So, okay.
So Leman Russ and Magnus end up in single combat. There's a great excerpt which I'll include in the script, and I'll upload this script to Drive for the patrons if you guys want to read it. There's a great excerpt describing their battle. But they end up in single combat. The battle rages. Eventually, Magnus delivers a devastating blow, shattering Russ's breastplate, and the fragments of the breastplate pierce through his chest, piercing one of his hearts. However, Russ clung onto Magnus's arm, retaliating by delivering a powerful kick to Magnus's lone eye. Blinded and vulnerable, Magnus was lifted into the air by Russ, who then broke Magnus's back over his knee.
Oh, hell yeah. He did the Batman thing.
The Salamanderstron, the end of Salamanderstron by Brian Jocks.
There was a kid who did that in our elementary school to another kid. I clearly remember. Who picked him up and just backbreakered him on the knee, and the guy's on the ground wheezing.
Holy fuck. Oh my god.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, you can stop Matt when he put his mind to something.
That wasn't him, but anyway.
Was it not him?
No.
I'm sure I saw him do that one time. But
Well, I've seen somebody else, but I like whenever whenever Magnus Loreboy's canon, he went for the chest and it broke and it punctured one of his hearts. It also punctured one of his 4 stomachs. And the super powerful acid that breaks down grass went and blinded Magnus.
Yeah.
It's like a cow's stomach.
I was gonna say Magnus is like Lehman Russ, the cow Primarch of the Space Wolves.
Yeah, they're the space cows.
Space cows, yeah. They have multiple hearts. They gotta have multiple stomachs.
Yeah,
I mean, cows really are the wolves of the barnyard, right?
They are, yeah. The black and white pattern of the Astartes armor for the Space Wolves really should have given it away.
Yeah, the spotted, yeah.
That's a whole scene, Space Marines.
Yeah, I mean, the fact that their weapons are pitchforks, it's all,
Yes, of course.
In his darkest hour, when all seems lost, Tzeentch, the changer of ways, appears before Magnus and offers him salvation. Tzeentch promises to preserve all that Magnus had achieved if he pledged eternal fealty to the Chaos God. Desperate to save himself, his legion, his world, and the knowledge they held, Magnus willingly surrendered his soul to Tzeentch's service. Tzeentch wasted no time in responding to Magnus's pledge. The City of Light, Prospero, was abruptly transported into the treacherous realm known as the Eye of Terror, where a daemon world awaited its new inhabitants. While Prospero was utterly destroyed that day, Magnus and his legion survived. When the Thousand Suns resurfaced, they had joined forces with Horus and his traitorous legions, marching towards Terra to lay siege. Magnus the Red had ascended to become the most powerful of all Tzeentch's demonic servants, a demon Primarch. That's the third picture. I think I showed it to you guys last week as well, but it's the picture of Magnus as his demon Primarch form. So he's gotten much bigger. And to close us off, I have a quote from Magnus from the Codex Chaos Space Marines 4th edition.
This picture is very cool, by the way. It's just like a demon with huge wings, also has a capeche, it looks like, and like all armored up, tusky head, tusky chest. Just much bigger than everyone. Everything that comes out of the Warhammer universe is just like badass as hell.
The elephant tusks on the chest seem like a good place to grab if you were fighting.
They don't seem to have any practical application, honestly.
It's when you're going in for a hug, it'll box in your chest while you're hugging.
Well,
them.
I mean, if you put your armpits over the tusks, it'd be a great hug. It's just like, oh, Magnus, can you stretch out my back a bit? And he's just like, oh yeah, and you just like get on the rack and then like,
yeah.
You also notice the human skulls that once adored his knee plates are now bird skulls.
Oh,
always with the birds. This guy. I mean, technically, if you think about the kind of Egypt theme. There's like multiple important Egyptian gods with bird heads, right?
It looks like if he straightened out his leg, he might pinch his thigh.
Yeah, maybe.
Or pinch his shin.
His shin.
Yeah.
Stab himself in the shin.
Yeah.
So a quote from Magnus. The minds of gods are not for mortals to know or to judge, except that Tzeentch has a place for all of us in his grand scheme, and be happy in the part you have to play. So thanks so much for listening, everybody. This has been The Lore Boys. This is our second Chaos Primarchs episode. If you like the episode, consider leaving us a good review or telling your friends about us if you have friends who you think might be interested in it. We have lots of other topics out there. A lot of people like the Dark Souls stuff. There's a million. There's literally a million Lore Boys episodes. So send them one, and we'd super appreciate it. Jimbo, you have anything you want to talk about?
Just check out the Discord. Thank you to, I think it was Littlefoot Big Ass who brought us back up to level 3. Yeah. I think actually we lost it again. So if anyone has a spare boost laying around.
Oh, we're level 3, 14 boosts right now at time of writing.
It's supposed to be 15, so I think we might be in danger of losing it. But and either way, if you have a boost or two, come on down to Discord. All the cool stuff happens there. In the patron section as well, you'll get access to all these episode picks that if you weren't happy by the way that we described them with our silly jokes, you can just take a look at them yourself. You can play loser titles. There's a patron AMA section, which we're pretty good at answering any questions that come through there. But anyways, Discord's where all the community action happens.
There's a couple people who take very good advantage of the AMA and some people who don't. But I definitely love that channel because sometimes the questions are very goofy. And sometimes
Magnus the Rat is one of the preeminent question askers. I feel
always
like.
grilling us. Yeah, grilling us about almost. It's like I love
asking the other times I shit my pants or whatever.
Yeah, there's been some horny posting recently, but not too much. But if you guys want, you can even see a shirtless Pete in Fit Boys chat in a pool.
It's underwater, but yeah, it's as good as it's gonna get, guys.
Yeah.
And Pete, anything going on in the Instagrams?
At Lore Boys Podcast on Instagram. Thank you very much. You guys can follow my publisher at Squared Idea as well. We are not doing Montreal Comic Con this year. It is in 11 days at time of recording. We're not doing it. We're doing it in the fall. There's a second one. So if you want to, there'll be more information as to how big that event is later on in the year. Yeah, that's about it for me. I was going to say something about Discord and forgot, so it doesn't matter.
Sure. Discord. It's software.
Yeah, Discord. It's linked below. It's toasted.
Finally, if you want to support the show, you can get access to this week's script, which I'll upload to the Patreon, patreon.com/theloreboys if you're interested. Like I said, it has a bonus excerpt from one of the novels, which describes in much more detail the battle between Leman Russ and Magnus, as told through the eyes of one of the Thousand Sons known as Araman. You'll get access to bonus content. I got about 45 minutes this week. You'll get access to the loser titles game. You get access to the episode art. You get access to all sorts of cool stuff.
Sometimes you can even vote on the next episodes and stuff.
That's true. Yeah,
we put up polls. Yeah, we put up polls as well, which is kind of a spoiler for the loser title game, where people try and guess the next episode.
That's the real problem.
Yeah.
That's really what we struggle with the polls. So maybe we'll do a poll on which you guys prefer, the loser titles or the polls. So.
Yeah.
But that's patreon.com/theloreboys if you want to check it out. The lowest tier starts at $3 and you get access to a whole bunch of good stuff. So finally, if you don't trust Patreon, we do of course have a service where we are trying to accumulate all the forbidden knowledge that humans have access to. We're creating a new Library of Alexandria, I guess you can call it.
Place. Alexandria, Ontario.
Pete's dad lives in Alexandria, so we're going to build a library out there. We're going to put all the forbidden knowledge, all the... if you guys ever dated a girl with a tattoo of a moon, if you could take a picture of that and send it to us, that'd be great.
Yeah, and honestly, dude, there's no way that they could have cut the stones that big and brought them from 3,000 kilometers away to build a pyramid that is within 0.1 degrees of pointing north. You know, they knew with the stars.
I need there to be, in 800 years, a Graham Hancock trying to explain how my dad built a pyramid in Alexandria, Ontario. There's no way he could have done it.
Yeah.
Your dad is exactly the type of person. I've met him, I think, once, right? But just from the stories you tell me, he's exactly the type of person to build a backyard Stonehenge. And just one day be like, I decided I wanted to build Stonehenge in my backyard. And so I just went and did it, you know? I started digging some holes, put some rocks in them, you know? And
it does seem like the type for weird flights of fancy. I like this politician's car. I'm going to drive literally 2,000 kilometers to go get it. Or
to go pick it up.
He's an eccentric fella. Yeah.
Exactly. That's all I'm saying. He's exactly
I want to see the wall that these Americans been talking about. Let's drive down to Arizona.
So if you want to either give us forbidden knowledge or volunteer to build Stonehenge in Pete's dad's backyard, you guys can subscribe to Lore Boys Prime, of course. And I think that would constitute a Lore Boys
out.